Real Talk with Jodi and Michal. Real friends, real situations, real life. Authentic chats from the heart to the gut. Two best friends keeping it raw, real, and relatable.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk with me, Michal, and one of my longest friends. I always say oldest, and then we joke about that. One of my longest time friends, Jodi Greenblatt of Empower Her Transformational Coaching. Hey, Jodi, how's it going?
Hi, Michal. Always good to see you again.
Yes, this is this is my favorite time of the week because we're forced to catch up.
I love it. I love it. And we always chit chat before and lose track of time. So I'm glad we're on now.
Good, good. How's your week been?
Week's been good. Week's been really good. Yeah.
Yeah, how are
No,
the puppies?
the puppies are adorable. Oh my gosh. So the puppies are 7 weeks old now, and right in this past week, they've become like little people, I say. They've got their personalities. Before they were just these little rats, like and they you couldn't distinguish one from the other really. Now they're just looking different. I can identify them, they have personalities. I can describe each one of their personalities. They just are too adorable for words.
At what age do you look at finding them their forever homes?
Yeah, that's exactly. At 6 weeks, we start finding their forever homes, but they go to their forever homes at 8 or 10 weeks. Don't quote me on that. I'm still learning about this. There's a law in many states that you can't sell a puppy before, I think it's 10 weeks, might be 8 weeks. So yeah, we're just at that point of finding homes, and then they'll be able to go in a few weeks' time. So it's been a whole process. First, the mom taking care of them. Well, actually, we were bottle feeding them the first couple of weeks. Then the mom was taking care of them and feeding them. Then we weaned them onto solid food, but really liquidized, like solid pebbles, but we liquidized it. And the mom dog was just feeding less. And now we're at the point where the mom isn't even feeding anymore. I know.
I mean, it's
It's the same process of weaning a child, weaning a baby. It's hard. It's bittersweet.
and I bet saying goodbye is going to be really challenging. Okay,
It's
we won't talk
already
about that.
It's already heartbreaking, the thought of these puppies that I've known and raised so closely
Mhm.
for 7 weeks. It's been a roller coaster, though, with dogs in general the last few weeks, with the various things that have happened with dogs and rehoming them. And oh my gosh, that's a whole other story. So my heart has been wrenched, and it's been a roller coaster of emotions for this last few months.
Oh gosh,
Yeah, it's life.
yeah, that's
That's
hard.
life.
That's hard. I think the most challenging thing I ever had to experience with my dogs, the time I had three dogs. I'm dachshund obsessed. I think I've mentioned that before. I had three dachshunds, one of which I'd had for since he was a baby, 11 years. He was actually a breeder's dog who wasn't going to go into the ring, so she gave him to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've discussed that. And then I got his sister, his actual litter sister,
Mm-hmm.
once she was retired from puppies. And then we got a third dog because I realized that you could get them in lots of different colors and I wanted another color.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Anyway, the first dog died very suddenly and it was very traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks later, his sister died. Literally, her heart failed after he died. So I lost two dogs in 3 weeks. And the third dog, who we had had for only a year, he was also a rescue.
Mm-hmm.
And he had never been an only dog. He had always been a dog with other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Went into his crate and wouldn't come out
Because of the losses he'd experienced. So
because
this
now he
is,
was alone and they were not the two
and he
dogs.
didn't know what was happening. He was
Oh,
experiencing grief the same way you were.
yeah. So he went into his crate and wouldn't come out. And it was crazy because I was going through all of this loss. And all I thought was, I can't lose three dogs. I can't lose three dogs.
Mm.
Lose three dogs in 6 weeks. Like
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, no. So we were talking before the podcast started about serendipity and how things happen, not always in the way we expect or in the way that we want, but life always has a way of taking care of itself.
Yeah.
And I got asked to foster a little dog, another little dachshund who had had back issues, and my one dog had had back issues, so I was experienced with that. And we brought this little dog into our home. And literally, she chose me as her human. She walked into my house, into my lap, and sat there and has been obsessed with me ever since.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, we call her the foster fail. And
Adoption success, foster
that,
fail.
that was almost 7 years ago. So
Oh. So what's her name?
her name is Charlotte.
Oh, that's Charlotte. Okay.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
Charlotte, the little dapple. The
Yeah,
little,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I was just looking at a picture of her.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So dogs, I mean, pets, I'm sure everybody knows pets in general, we get very attached to them and we
They,
could
they,
probably, Mhm.
they're part of the family. And
Yeah.
that, so just to expand on what I was saying then, since you've described that, where you got your first one from a breeder who was no longer breeding, right? Who the dog was no
No,
longer.
it wasn't that she was no longer breeding. It was that this particular dog was not going to, his legs were a little long for a Dachshund.
Oh,
So he was never going to be shown in the ring
right.
and he wasn't going to be bred.
Okay, so this is the roller coaster that I was talking about. That's how it started as well. A few months ago, one of the dogs that we were going to breed got pyometra, which is an infection of the uterus. So in again, this was also the emotional roller coaster. In emergency surgery, one day I took the dog to emergency vet. Emergency vet told us to take the dog immediately to the surgical center. This dog had an immediate like emergency hysterectomy. I mean, this was just suddenly in a day, no emotional prep. So, and this is how I spent my day. And because she was a show dog, she was a champ, and there were hopes that she would be able to breed and have beautiful babies since she was a champion show dog. Now she couldn't breed, so it's this mixed feeling of yes, she's for breeding, but she's a pet. But we gave her to a family in Colorado. She's a Bernese Mountain Dog, so a family in Colorado who has her mother, the dog's mother, already,
Nice.
and also was given to her when she could no longer breed. So that was the start of this emotional roller coaster of, whether you lose a pet through grief or through
Any
giving
other,
away because it's better for all circumstances, it's still a loss.
it's tough. It's really tough. And often I think people who don't have pets or who have not lost a pet that they've had for a long time, not everybody, but often minimize what you go through when you lose the animal.
I haven't experienced that, to speak to that, but I hear what you're saying because we know that they're part of our family. They're part of we grieve just like for anyone. I remember when my daughter was about, how old was she? 3, 4, maybe 5. First, how old was she? Anyway, little. Her fish died. There was the first like thing that she'd lost, that died. And I was like, you got to teach grief from the beginning. So I gave her options. Do you want to flush it down the drain, down the toilet, or do you want to bury it? She wanted to bury it. So we had a little ceremony in the corner of the backyard. So that was her first
Oh
experience.
my goodness. My goodness.
Mhm.
All right. We need to get off pets and actually talk about things I
Well,
think
we can talk about grief. We can talk about what we were going to
interesting.
talk about. Sleep is the
We're
theme
going
this
to
week.
talk about sleep, and I'm wondering maybe if grief would be something, seeing as we're on that topic, because part of some of the work that you do, I'm sure, and you can expand on it, is when we realize we're in a relationship that isn't serving us and we lose the relationship, there's a definite, there's a feeling of loss and a feeling of grief, and we avoid these feelings, right? we don't like to experience uncomfortable feelings, and that can lead to more of the procrastinating behavior or the behavior that keeps you in the relationship, correct?
So when you talk about the loss that we experience in a relationship, so loss can come in many forms, like we were already saying. Loss can be a literal death. Loss can be distance. Loss can be no longer being able to see the person or the animal. Loss can be, when you talk about a relationship, that's often loss of the dream and the hope that you thought was going to be, a loss of the future that you envisioned. And that is that it's a very painful loss, that heartbreak or that loss in a toxic relationship. It just comes so suddenly because the person you thought they were, your world suddenly gets turned upside down. That cognitive dissonance, which is where your thoughts are contradictory and you can't make sense of it. So it's a loss of who you thought that person was and the loss of that future that you thought you were going to have is a huge, like, shock kind of an experience, which also makes sense with the stages of grief, which I think many people know, but just to go back to that, stages of grief are first denial, which is the first stage is denial, which is shock. That's where we find people saying things like, but I just saw them yesterday, when someone dies, but I just spoke to them last week, but I just saw them yesterday. Obviously, that statement doesn't make sense. Just because you spoke to them last week doesn't mean they can't be dead today. But that shows the shock, the denial, followed by anger, because we get angry when we lose someone or something. We get angry when a relationship ends. Then bargaining, where we like kind of go have these thoughts of like, I wish this would happen, or praying to God, if you believe in God or the universe, like, I promise I will do XYZ if I can just see them again, if I can just hear them, things like that. And then depression. That's when you talk about how we don't feel the emotions. When we hit that fourth stage of depression, that's when we finally, like, the real emotions set in. And then finally an acceptance stage. And some people, it doesn't mean you go through those stages linearly, that you go through the stage, then the next stage. You can go back and forth. You can never hit a stage. A person can never hit that depression stage and never quite accept a person's death. That makes things more difficult. So to your point, being able to experience your emotions is so very important in all aspects of things, not just grief, but with everything.
Right. So
And
that comes back to all of our previous conversations of finding words other than happy, sad to
yes,
describe what we're feeling, right? English
yes,
has lots, every language has loads of words to describe loads of different feelings as opposed to simply happy, sad,
yeah,
or happy, sad, angry.
yes, exactly. It can be nuanced right down to so refining the feelings that we have. That's, yeah, being able to identify our emotions.
Right. But that feeling of loss, it's interesting because you and I have discussed, I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I've been in and out of therapy all my life. I had some very for lack of a better term, volatile relationships with some members of my family. And there's a couple of, I mean, I saw some good therapists and not good therapists, and that's another conversation to maybe have
Mhm.
another time, is how to know if a therapist is right for you.
Mhm.
But one of the therapists actually said to me, she said, you need to mourn the mother you wish you had.
I see a similar concept,
And
right? So you're not
yes, and
actually, like, in a breakup, you're not actually losing the person. You're losing what you hoped you would have. And sorry, I don't want you to forget what you were going to say, but it makes me think of this concept of feeling like you're grieving someone who's still alive. is a whole, it adds a whole other layer of pain to the loss of someone. They're still alive, but they're not talking to you, or they're not the person you thought they were. It's a whole other painful loss.
So let's dig into that a little bit because
I don't want you to forget what you were saying as
oh,
well.
I was done. Like that was the statement was simply that because I think it was really relevant to what you were saying about grief in a relationship is, you know, I was angry for a long time and I wish this, I wish that, why can't they be this? Why can't they be that? Which we know, we often know, but we don't know that you can't change another adult. You can't fix another adult. And, you know, as much as we wish and we hope, another adult is never going to be what we want them to be. Our goal is to learn to accept them for who they are. Yes, there's work we can do together to communicate and to speak to each other's listening better, but
Yes.
I can't make you a different person the same way that you can't make me a different person. You know, I
Right.
am who I am, kind of a thing.
Right.
So, and the when I was able to internalize that feeling specifically, it helped with release a lot.
Internalize which feeling?
You know, just you need to mourn the mother you wish you had.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's not that I mourned that I cried or that I, you know, went through any mourning stage. I'd gone
No,
through
it sounds more like a mourning of like coming to terms with the
coming
concept that what
absolute.
was happening.
Yeah, so it was you need to accept that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all these other people's mothers who you wish yours was like, that's never gonna, no matter what you do, every time you expect something, it's not going to happen and you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So who at the end of the day is perpetuating your own destructive cycle? It's you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure, I mean, this wasn't a romantic relationship in any way, and romantic relationships are similar and different from that perspective. I had to come to terms with different things about choosing the nature of my relationship, but there must be some similarities there. So when you have a patient or a client that comes to you that has this I wish, or how do I make him, or you know what strategies or what is some of the work that you do around that to help them, because in those situations saying, well, you just need to, you know, mourn the man you wish you had, or mourn yeah, that's not going to necessarily, like, this is after years and years and years of therapy, so I was in a different headspace, but that's not necessarily going to do the job. That, you know, you might be looked at as, well, you're not very caring and feeling and you're quite unempathetic. And so
Yes.
how to balance not perpetuating the cycle and
Mhm.
supporting somebody to move forward and go through that.
Yeah. And let's look at even those examples you gave. I wish he was different. I wish circumstances were different. Or how, and you even used the example, what came out of your mouth was, how do I make him?
Yes.
Right. So both of those statements are an indication of not accepting reality for what it is. And in toxic relationships, in particular, if I don't often I don't love talking about narcissism because I do think people use that word and describe people as narcissistic, as narcissists when they are not. I think it's overused in terms, yes, people can have narcissistic traits, but calling someone narcissist, but in particular with a narcissist, or I'm giving an extreme example of a toxic relationship. I think people are not seeing reality. They're seeing the person for who they want the person to be. So if you're saying things to yourself, and I don't mean you, if a person is saying things to you about a client, saying things to themselves like, I wish it was different. I wish how do I make him? We can't make someone be something. So I think a key piece is what we can control and change is ourselves. So if we look at, well, what is it we want to have different? And what part of that can we control? We can't control making someone be something. We can speak to someone, and now we're talking about a more healthy relationship. Speak to someone, tell them what your preference is, tell them how their behavior affects you, tell them how you feel about something. Ask for something, ask for your needs to be met, ask how you'd like things to be. It still doesn't mean they're going to do it. So it's about what can you do? What part do you have control over? What can you ask for? What can you do? What part about you do you want to change so that the situation feels more manageable? Or what coping skills do you want to use so that you can cope? But making someone be something or wishing something will be a certain way, to some extent, I'll make the argument we're just not living in reality when that happens. And that the life becomes hard when we don't face reality.
It's true. And as you were talking, I was simply thinking of a comeback. Okay, so how do I need to be? And I'm going to use a very extreme example
Okay.
because I think it's something people can visualize, right? A man is physically abusive.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely unacceptable behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I know this firsthand. So it's a really tough situation to be in. But the question comes up always, how do I need to be so that he won't do that?
Yeah.
And I think part of the grief and the realization and the reality is it doesn't matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what you do. And even communicating your needs, that actually
Mm-hmm.
might be more destructive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You're talking about in an abusive situation.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Because
So
you're not going to get your needs met. It's not going to matter what you do differently. Communication, yeah, abuse is a whole different ball game. It's you you don't want to ever accept mental, emotional, physical, sexual abuse.
right, but at the end of the day, I'm sure there's women who come to you wanting to, for lack of a better term, fix an abusive relationship by
Mm-hmm.
doing something different. So
Mm-hmm.
because once you're seeking help,
Mm-hmm.
but the point that you're seeking help, you truly believe that the nature of abuse, your self-esteem has been so battered that the nature of abuse is a shortcoming in you.
Mm-hmm. That you
Not
think it's your
a,
fault. You need to do something different.
yeah.
And really, the thing to do different is to build your sense of self, build your self-worth, become the best version of you, so that you can make the best decisions for yourself.
So then we're back to the beginning. You cannot do that without understanding the experience of loss of the dream.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
have to let that go. So how do we work through, and this would apply for many things on many levels, how
Mm-hmm.
do we work through accepting losing the dream? Because you can see, looking at me objectively, you could
Mm-hmm.
see that I'm living on cloud whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which is fine. I apologize for my dogs getting very excited, and which is fine. But how do you get me to accept that, and how do you explain it to me without getting my defenses up, and then I simply back away?
Mm-hmm. You know, a person needs time to process as well. So part of that is really taking the time to process what's going on with them, um, looking at what is working for you, facing reality about the parts of the relationship that are just not working, not healthy, harmful to your well-being, and just starting to evaluate what do you really want? Is what do you really want in life? Is this good for you? How is it affecting you?
Just want him to love me. That's all.
Yeah. So what does love mean? That's a whole other conversation right there. What does that look like? You just want him to love you. Is he loving you now by being physically abusive, verbally abusive? And I just want him to. That's the same as how do I make him? I wish. We can't do that. We can't just want someone to do something. Again, to your point, and this is a reiteration, yes, you can always have a conversation with a partner and tell them how you feel, what you want. But when it's abusive, we're beyond that. You're not going to be able to, unless the person is working on themselves. So unless the abusive person is working on themselves too.
But that's their choice, not yours.
That's 100%.
And it also unfortunately can't be court mandated choice. It has to be theirs.
So I think you're speaking to the concept of a person can go and get help in action. They can show up at a batterers intervention group or at therapy but if they court ordered, if it's not coming from an internal motivation, it's not necessarily going to have the same outcome.
I'm saying if they're doing it for something like staying out of jail, right?
That's motivation. Where's the motivation coming from?
Yeah. And so you can go through the motions, but not really working. So back to grief.
Yes.
We're going through this loss. We've lost the dream of the relationship. The person is still there. They may still be in our house because we haven't gotten to a place, or in our home, if we're living together, it might be our home. You haven't yet gotten to the place where you can decide whether you need to escape or whether you are ever going to be able to, for lack of a better term, evict the person, even if it's your own home. That's a different thing. Or we're already separated from the person. We understand this and we see them move on while we're going through this grief.
Oh, that's tough. That's so hard, right?
Right. So different from death, which is hard. Like death is awful, and you and I have both been through it. It's not pleasant, and that's an understatement. But it's fine. It's fine. We will never see that person again, unfortunately, as much as we wish and hope. They will never come knocking at our door. They will never. It's not going to. It's not going to happen, right? We'll have dreams, we'll have fantasies, but at the end of the day, we really know. We know they're not going to simply knock on the door and be. It's different when it's a relationship. So
when the person's still alive, they're still there.
And not only alive, sometimes alive and there, physically there, but sometimes alive and the disregard of you is loss and grief on its own. Right? Once somebody's moved on and it's like, I don't care about you and you're still attached, that grief in itself can take its toll, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's part of heartbreak.
Right. And how do if somebody's coming to you, and not with everybody, and we all cry and deal with it and that, but it can lead to some very self-destructive behavior or destructive behavior generally, the texts and the calls and the notes and other things. So how do we help somebody deal? Or have you, not me, that's so far out of my wheelhouse, but how do you help somebody cope and deal with that and appropriately grieve someone who's alive?
Yeah. So you know what? It still comes down to having time to process, having time to vent, journaling about it, talking about it, and acknowledging emotions. It's really, we keep coming back to that, but that's how important it is to be able to recognize how you're feeling. And that is something that sometimes people have to learn how to do over time with a therapist or with a coach, because many of us have been taught through unintentional interactions as we grow up to suppress our emotions. Something as simple as don't cry, or getting a look from someone when you're showing a certain emotion, or whether it's anxiety, whether it's happiness, whether it's maybe you're jumping around from excitement as a child and a parent looked at you and said, you're being so rowdy. Meanwhile, you're just being happy. Something as simple as that can be the start of us suppressing our emotions. And so being able to express your emotions, recognize how you feel, and experience the pain, sitting in the pain. That
which
is often a first step.
and that's something we avoid because as humans, we are evolutionarily programmed to avoid discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
We are evolutionary programmed to do whatever it takes to avoid discomfort. And change is
Mm-hmm.
discomfort. Negative
Mm-hmm.
emotion is
Mm-hmm.
discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there are reasons people stay in relationships because the fear of change is so uncomfortable
Yeah.
that it's like better the devil you know. But back to the feeling your emotions, another therapist, maybe it was the same one, I don't remember, but said something very interesting to me that has actually made a difference and an impact to the way that I behave in my coaching practice.
Yeah.
And that is, she would never offer anybody that was crying. There was always Kleenex and tissues on the table,
Yeah.
but she would never offer. She would never say, here's a Kleenex and here's a tissue. And I asked her why
Mhm.
one day, and she said, because that's telling you to dry your tears. And you need to have
Yep.
your tears. You need to have full permission to experience your emotions,
Yeah.
especially in an appropriate place.
Yeah, 100%.
And say
It's an interesting example you gave because it's kind of like was I don't know, therapy 101 when when
that.
I first learned therapy, that is one of the examples that came up as well. Yeah, we don't need to hand
And
someone, they're perfectly capable of reaching for their own tissue
for
when they're
their own
ready.
issue, right, when they want. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because um, I'm going to bring this, if you're comfortable with it, I'm going to bring the grief thing into what I do. And I mean, grief and emotional eating and grief and eating
Mhm.
are very intertwined. But
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
that's besides itself, right? Food is a way to numb our emotions. All our emotions. It's always been used to numb our emotions, right? You have something to celebrate, you eat, right? Something to cry about, you eat. And this is what
Mhm.
go have some ice cream when
I
you
was just going to give that example, right? How often is there that classic thing
absolutely
of women crying and eating a tub of ice
ton
cream?
of ice cream, right? It's ridiculous. And it's very societally accepted.
Mhm.
But what and when you're speaking to people and it's coming up, you can really see a lot of that emotion. And people share a lot with me, a lot of really deep personal stuff with me when we start talking about this, because food and emotion are very interconnected. But I wanted to speak about another part of the food and grief,
Mhm.
is that how changing our eating and changing our diets and showing up differently around people that we know, especially and people that we're quite close to who judge us, how there is a sense of. I always used to say that changing, you go through the 5 stages of grief when you learn about what really is healthy eating for your body, and you have to change your diet because
Oh,
at first there is this absolute denial. No, this can't be so. We can't have been lied to about certain nutrition myths, right? That can't be it. And
yeah.
then there's anger. I can't believe this happened for so long, and this is what I've gone through, and I felt like this for so long, and I've been dealing with this for so long because all I've been told is that this is how I should, this is what should work, and there's something wrong with me because it's not. And it's still, you go into an absolute depression about it. It's like the whole FOMO, right? The fear of missing out, and so I'm never going to be able to have that again. And really you go through.
Yeah.
I sense food is such an emotional thing that
Mm-hmm.
when we change it significantly,
Mm-hmm.
specifically with regards to sugars and starches,
Mm-hmm.
very specifically, because they
Mm-hmm.
have such a profound effect on our dopamine receptors
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that people go through this immense sense of loss. I've even written blog articles about the 5 cents, the 5 stages of grief when you reduce your sugar intake,
Wow. So
because
are you talking about loss of the concept of how I thought I could eat, or loss of what I'm going to have to change
it's lots
and
of it's
what I'm going to miss eating?
all of it. It's this, big. So I'll give you an example. If I say to you, or most people, not necessarily you, but if I say to somebody, give up broccoli. Broccoli is killing you. You specifically, broccoli is very bad for you. Give up broccoli. Okay, I like broccoli. I'll miss broccoli,
Yeah.
but okay, right, it's for my health. I'll do it.
Okay.
Not a problem. Ask somebody to give up bread or cheese or pizza and look at their reaction. It is a gut-wrenching reaction, and they get really, so I'll never be able to have that again.
So that's like sugars and carbs, and it's
starches,
because
specific.
of the dopamine hit that it gives that even though people aren't thinking, oh, I can never have pizza because I'm not going to get that dopamine hit. That's not what people are thinking. But
Oh,
somehow internally we know that when we eat those foods, we feel good.
yes. And sometimes in bad relationships, when we become so we become addicted to the cycle of drama almost, right? So sorry, my dogs are very excited.
Oh, you know what? It's not as loud as you think. That's what often happens is you can hear it loudly, but I can hear it slightly.
I understand that, but if people can, I apologize. But yeah, you get addicted to this negative feedback loop cycle, and losing a person who's still alive, losing something that's there, understanding that it's not supportive of your health, understanding, not wanting to let go.
Yeah.
What can I do? What can I change? So, and I know it's not exactly relevant, but if you really think about how you would feel if I asked you, and cheese and bread tend to be the biggest ones, and chocolate, to never eat those three again. And cheese is an interesting one, which we can
I
talk
was actually thinking that. I was wondering about that because I was
is,
thinking it's not a carb, it's not a sugar.
it's a little bit of, so cheese has anyway, because dairy in general, babies are, dairy needs to be made in a way that's very addictive to the brain. Why? Because a baby needs to eat the dairy, because that's what dairy is. It's a food for babies to make babies grow into big animals or whatever those are. So give me just a second. I'm going to try and.
Okay. I can hear you. I can read your lips. You're like, Charlotte. And I'm going to tell you, when I turn around here, it's because I'm patting my dog because he's getting restless and I feel like he's going to be the next one to bark.
Right. Back to the original topic. So it's meant to be, so in its just innate structure, it's meant to create that same addictive dopamine hit property. And it's a morphine type reaction, not exactly like morphine, but a morphine type reaction that happens, and we get, and so that the baby will eat, so that the baby will grow. As adults, we're not meant to grow, but we still have the same reaction to the food. So we want more and more and more of it. So cheese is hard. And that's the very short version. But ask somebody to give up bread or chocolate.
Yeah.
And it's really, you can see it's a visceral response. It's challenging, it's hard. You can, how do I manipulate so that I can still have it? And literally many of my coaching discussions are with people trying to bargain to still have it, right? I wish I could. I wish there was. What do I need to do to be different so that this relationship works?
So that I can still have chocolate. What can I do? Well, if I eat less here, can I have some chocolate?
Can I have some chocolate, right? Or if I exercise more, can I have some chocolate?
Yeah.
And now there are some ways to have a little bit of chocolate. There's probably no ways to have a little bit of the man who's, the relationship that's destructive. So from that perspective, it's different. But people have to go through that mourning phase. They have to let go of the dream of
how they thought they could eat.
Yes, right. And for many people, it's the dream of that ridiculously awful thing we've been told, which we will have another conversation about, maybe next week, everything in moderation.
Oh,
Because
it's so interesting you said that because you know what I was about to ask? What
yeah,
about that concept of if the only way you can not eat chocolate is to just say, is to just not have it? Like, sometimes some people are just like, I can't stop if I have one little block of the bar. So if I just choose to not have chocolate at all, I
yeah,
can do better. Like, yeah, all or
it's
nothing.
easier. And I had one of my mentors, Dr. Jason Fung. He's an amazing guy. But one of his analogies, and this will apply to women, especially men might not understand, but when we have a uterine ultrasound, you have to drink a lot and swell your bladder. And
Mhm.
more often than not, you go in and the ultrasound tech looks and she goes, your bladder's too full. You need to go pee a little bit.
100%. I can say I've experienced that.
Right. Now, not peeing at all is not comfortable. It's really difficult, right? And it can be painful. But trying to pee a little bit and then
Yes.
is
Yes.
harder,
Yes.
harder than not peeing at all.
So true.
Same thing, right? But I want
Yeah.
to get into moderation in a different place because it's a
Uh-huh.
topic on it's an absolute topic on its own because
Okay. Yeah. Let's
it's
talk
some
about
of the
that
most
next time.
misguided advice we have ever been given, ever, when it comes to nutrition. And I think when it comes to life,
Wait,
because
moderation is the most
yeah,
misguided information?
it's one of the most misguided pieces of advice
Interesting.
because what's moderation for you and what is moderation? What is a moderate amount of anything for you that's going
Right.
to be exactly
And
the same as a moderate
well,
amount for me?
and for
Yes.
different things,
Yeah.
moderation can be a different thing.
Yeah, like what's a moderate amount of arsenic? Everything in
Yeah.
moderation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? What's a moderate amount of heroin
So
for a
it's don't
minute?
take that phrase to the extreme is what it
But
is.
but people do, and in my world, people do, and that's what they come to me with, and that's where the grief and the mourning comes in because
Mm-hmm.
we blow up these, for lack of a better term, we blow up these myths, and what's left? What's left is a hole. What's left is okay. So what do I eat, or what do I
What
do?
is the solution to that then?
Another conversation. And I'm baiting another conversation because
Okay.
the same as in a relationship, sometimes that hole, that space is unbelievably uncomfortable because we're relearning something. You're relearning to be alone. You're relearning to not use food to numb your emotions. You're relearning to sit with your emotions. You're
Mm-hmm.
learning how to prioritize self and how to love yourself and what self-love truly looks like. Does self-love truly look like surrounding yourself with people who don't have your best interests at heart? Is true love consistently putting something into your body that in the moment might feel great? It's like
Mm-hmm.
that orgasm, the sex is great in the relationship, but the rest of the relationship is awful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the orgasm worth the rest of the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Is that 5 minutes that it tastes amazing, or that tiny little dopamine hit that makes you
How do you, it's easier said than done. How do you deal with, what's the advice on that?
you have to learn to identify first and foremost, same, identify your emotions and
Hmm.
sit with your emotions. It's
So
also
you teach your clients the same thing about emotions? Like if a person's really wants to realizes that they're overeating and they really need to like stop at this point and they can't, just stop, identify your emotions, figure out what is going on right now. Why do I feel the need
yes,
to eat more
absolutely,
when I've eaten so much already? And
absolutely.
get down to the root of what it is. What's the stress that's
Absolutely.
happening?
And
What's happening?
we use hand signals like a stop sign. We use colors. We use even an elastic on the hand to just get your brain
To
off for
snap
a second,
snap yourself out
right?
of it.
Out of it for a second.
Mhm.
Identify the emotion. Even if
Mhm.
it takes a second, those couple of seconds can
Mm.
really make a difference, right? Sit
Mhm.
with the emotion. That's
Yeah.
been incredibly difficult for people. And then
Mhm.
also, even before that, it comes to a lot of the same work that you do. What is it that you want for your life?
Mm-hmm.
That you truly want, not what you think you should want, not what social media tells you you want, not what your mother decided she wanted for you when you were 5, right?
That's
Not
a
what your
big
husband
question.
thinks, not
That's
what
a
your husband
big
thinks you should
question.
do.
Mm-hmm.
But we get to, and you do it as well, right? That's what coaching is. Why? 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 Why do you want to lose weight? Because I want to fit into my jeans. Well, why is that important? Right? And why is that important? And why is
Mm-hmm.
that important? And at the end of the day, there's multiple reasons for it,
Mm-hmm.
but people who try and change for superficial reasons
Mm-hmm.
because they think they should rarely,
Maintain the change.
yeah, succeed
Yeah.
long, have sustainable. They might have small results, but they don't have sustainable results. And people get mad at me. They get really mad when I tell them that what they're telling me they want, they don't want. I'm saying, well, clearly that's not important enough to you. And they'll say, well, yes, it is. It's the most important thing in my life. And I was like, well, if it was the most important thing in your life, your actions would in some way show me
Yeah.
what it is. And it's harsh. And it's similar, I think it's similar in relationships, right? Is that we say we want something, yet we behave in a way that doesn't allow us to get it. And we wonder why we don't have it.
The example you gave also made me think about drug addiction. It's a tough one. Is it's hard to stop using,
Sure.
but what you're going to say, I think you're answering.
I was going to say, but the true desire to stop using will drive you to go to rehab, will drive you to try. You might fail. It'll drive you to get up and try again, right? It'll drive you to try something else. It'll drive you to not make excuses when somebody's saying to you, you can't have those friends anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? If somebody buys cookies every single week at the grocery store for their kids and
Mm-hmm.
ends up eating the cookies, who are you really buying the cookies for?
Yeah, you're
If
saying
I
be
tell you,
honest with yourself. You're saying be
yeah,
honest with yourself, and is your behavior matching what you say you want? Yeah, that contradiction is internal conflict that happens, which is very, very hard for people to navigate. Because internal conflict, that contradiction inside of us,
it's
is
impossible. It can be impossible, and it's always more doable with help, I think,
yes,
or with
100%
support. And it's not even
support.
coaching
Mhm.
help, it's support, it's community support, it's some type of relationship support. And I think one of the things about particularly toxic relationships is the perpetrator
Yes,
isolates.
yes, yes.
Um,
Not
and
having support absolutely makes it more difficult to leave for so many reasons. You don't have the support to help you leave, and you lose perspective.
yeah,
So, this is back to my soapbox of we've lost the village, my soapbox of we need community. I think one of the reasons we need community and friends and support is to give us perspective. If we live only in our head or with only one person and we're isolated from the rest and we only get their perspective, we lose perspective of
yeah.
life, of reality. We need people in our lives.
And people who think differently. I think one of the things I
Yeah.
didn't discuss it in a podcast is how different you and I are. We are we are quite different. We're different in how we view relationships, in how we view people, in how we approach our relationships. We're different. We don't like the same. I mean, even when we were young, we never liked the same kind of men ever. There's some
True.
there's genres of music we probably like because we grew up. We don't like the same music. We don't dress the same. Like,
Different opinions sometimes, but
exactly.
it's what makes our conversation so rich
Well,
and and be able to respect each other's differences.
right. And I think going through grief, sometimes you need to get out of the echo chamber of people who are enabling the continuation of the grief, which is quite easy to do, and really get into a place with people who love and support you unconditionally, who will help you move through the grief and beyond. So
Mhm.
rather than, oh my God, he was such an asshole, I can't believe it, you're so you're so wonderful, you deserve better, I can't, you must be so hurt, you're so crying, how could he move on, this, that, and the other. all of the things that you're feeling, and somebody's just echoing it back to you, which might make you feel good in the moment because, yes, everybody agrees with me and I'm right. And we love being right, all of us right. And that's okay. But having somebody say, I understand that it's hard, right? What can we do today? One little thing that we can do today just for you, just to let's go out of the house, let's go to a yoga class. Well, I'm going to cry the whole way through the yoga class. That might be good for you. Sometimes it's nice to be in an environment where it's safe and you can rather than, okay, if that's too much of an emotional thing for you, we won't go anywhere.
Yeah. You're
Right?
talking about having the right kind of support, and that agreeing with someone isn't necessarily the most helpful support. I mean, we all understand when you want to console a friend and you say, "Oh, he was an asshole anyway." But you said it well when you're like, "But that's not what you're thinking at the time of the breakup. You're not thinking he's an asshole. You're thinking he was the love of my life." And so it doesn't resonate. Let me clarify. We're not saying that friends can't be supportive that way, but there's another layer of support that you're speaking to.
And there's a time and an appropriate amount of time and place, right? If a year later you're still grieving the relationship from a year ago, it's time to perhaps look at why this is affecting you so much still to this degree in this way, and what can we do to make it a little easier. And I have another analogy, if I may.
Yeah.
And my last analogy as we close off.
Yeah.
Again, years of therapies and self-reflection and personal development stuff. So things come out a little, but when something traumatic happens, when we have a trauma or when we have a grief, it's like we have this jar of our life, and the trauma is this big black ball and it fills the jar. Now, that big black ball is never going to shrink. Often we're told by society, oh, just get over it, you'll get over it, time heals, this, that, and the other. And we think about it as the ball shrinking. But the other perspective to think about it isn't that the ball shrinks, it's that the jar grows.
Yeah, I love it.
So the ball, it still stays exactly, the heartache is still there. It's always there. It's going to make you who you are. It's going to change some decisions moving forward. It's going to do stuff to you. But you enrich your life around it so much that it becomes a little less significant and a little less significant. And doesn't mean it's not there. It'll never be there and it'll never be small. And if you really think about it, it was like, oh my goodness, I remember my first heartbreak and my first loss. I'm sure you do too, right? It was awful. It was awful. And I can take myself back there and it's all like you can see I'm holding my heart. It was awful. But I've grown and expanded my life around that unless I really actively take myself back there and engage myself in all of that, I can say, yeah, it was awful. It was horrible. It's with me. But look at all of this that I have now. And gratitude, I think, plays a big part in that too.
Yeah, yeah. So that's you've described a couple of things. One is less focus on the negative and really building up the positive, which this example, the gratitude. And you've also said something else about trauma, like things that happen to us. That can never be taken away. It's about how we deal with it.
Absolutely. And as with the loss of a relationship, and I think that's a lovely way to leave it for today, because as much as it's simple advice, it's really, really hard to follow. But I will say that practice is very important. Practice does, and it's a work in practice, a work in progress all the time, right? It's not what happens to me. It's how I move through what happens.
Yeah, I would say that's a good takeaway.
And I don't like things like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger and all. No. You can really grow and develop and evolve in the most wonderful and beautiful ways if you consistently remind yourself that there are always ways through something. And there are multiple ways, and none are right or wrong. They're all
Yeah. You know, that's the phrase I love. There's no way out but through.
Yes.
Have to go through it, experience the pain.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Well, this has been a really, really, I've loved this conversation. This has been
Oh, yeah,
interesting.
it's they always are, and I'm hoping everybody else is enjoying them. And we look forward to your comments and your feedback about them. So please do that. Let us know if there's anything else you really want us to talk about.
Please.
Subscribe, like, share with a friend if you think somebody else will find this helpful. It just helps us share our message with you and with more people. So,
Mhm. And we want to keep it relevant. We want to keep it real. So
yeah.
if we can hear what you all want to hear about, we're happy to bring that to you.
Right. Absolutely. So on that note, my beautiful friend, I look forward to seeing you next week. I look forward
Absolutely.
to chatting with everybody, even though we can't see them, but getting to know everybody a little better through the weeks too. So take care, everybody.
Nice to see you. Bye.
Bye.